Yeah. Oh, hi Simon. Thanks. Yeah. So I grew up as a boat kid. My parents, Andy and Liza Copeland, had a Beneteau First 38 called Bagheera, and from 85 to 91 did a circumnavigation myself and my two brothers. And even before that, I mean, I think I was born and taken from the hospital down to a boat and then taken home. So I've been on the water as long as I can remember. I could not tell you when my parents first became OCC members, but it's before I can remember. I mean, it's been a very, very long time. And yeah, it's been kicking around as part of our lives for a long time. My parents were port officers up in Vancouver for a long time. My mom's the rear commodore up there still, so very active. I did my qualifying passage in the very early 2000s, slightly unusual one from Guinea-Bissau in West Africa across to Brazil, which was sort of from the bump to the bump, but did make it more than 1,000 miles. Not a fast passage that one. You're in the doldrums quite a lot, but
Mm.
it was very interesting. And yeah, I've been on and off since. More recently, with Freeranger, we bought the boat 3 years ago, actually in Fiji. And then brought it up to the Pacific Northwest to Victoria and Vancouver Island. Sailed around there for a year and a half, getting the boat ready, and then took off in July 2024. And we have slowly made our way from Victoria to New Zealand in that time.
So we is you, Duncan, your wife,
Yeah,
Larissa, and two kids. How old are they?
two
Eden and
kids.
Sky, yeah.
Yeah, Eden. So Eden, he is 9 now. Sky is 7. They were 5 and 7 when we left, so just over 18 months ago. And yeah, they are boat kids through and through now. They again, they've been on boats since before they can remember. We lived in Norway previously, actually, and had a boat there and sailed a lot. And yeah, so the four of us are on board, and then we have various people come and join, as we all do, friends, family. And then, we'll get into the science part, but we also make the boat available to local researchers and ocean communicators and so on. So sometimes we have some very interesting and lovely people on board as part of that as well.
Oh, that's brave taking strangers onto your boat with brave for them to join you as well.
Yeah.
Thrust into the family in the middle of nowhere. What sort of numbers? I mean, you've got a relatively big boat, haven't you? You've got about 50 foot or something, right?
Yeah, we've got a 50-foot boat, and when we were looking for boats, which took a very long time, we were looking for a boat that had four sleeping cabins. That was very important to my wife, and with three kids, it also made sense. So we have a Beneteau First 50. My father was a Beneteau dealer for 30 years, so I know the boats very well and grew up on one. But that actually wasn't why we chose this boat. It's more that this era boat, so it's the era boat they built between 96 and 2004. They had a very clever four cabin layout on one of the models. So it works really well for us, which means we've got sort of two doubles aft, two doubles forward. Everyone's got their own head, which is a little bit much work, but that's all right.
Um,
And we have one, so I'm sitting in one, which is a cabin, but also doubles as our office because as you know, we're schooling the kids, so it's somewhere they can come do online classes, but also as well as running our directory and various other things on the environmental side. We both also work a little bit still, so it gives us some flexibility in terms of having people on board, but also somewhere people can disappear and do some work and
so
get
as
on
part,
without that life.
so as part of it, I mean, you're obviously homeschooling, but part of what you've been doing is a lot of citizen science with your kids as well, I think, as you
Yeah.
go. Just tell us a bit about how you got into the environmental stuff professionally and your wife, I think. So just tell us a bit about your eco credentials. You say you're working in Norway. Was that environmental stuff, or what were you doing there?
Yeah. So Larissa and I actually met many years ago in London, both working for an organization called the Environmental Justice Foundation, which is an NGO that sort of works at where the sort of nexus of environmental impact and human rights comes in, particularly in developing countries where it's often the poorest who are the most impacted by environmental issues. And she was head of communications there. I led the investigations across all the work the organizations did, but particularly I worked on the oceans campaigns. And my background previous to that, university, both in Canada and went to University of Scotland for a while, as well was in the environmental field. And I'd worked with various projects at that stage around the world, in Ecuador and Indonesia and West Africa and so on. As part of that oceans campaign, I was really working mostly on illegal fishing. So and particularly foreign illegal fishing, so where big industrial boats were coming into countries and scooping up fish, but also causing huge conflicts with local fishers and so on. So I worked there for a number of years, left, and then I was based in West Africa, really right post Sierra Leone and Liberia's civil wars, and sort of was charged with rebuilding their fisheries management systems there, and ended up working really throughout Africa on that issue. And in parallel, Larissa was still working in comms in the environmental field. She was working particularly with a lot of organizations that were working on ocean plastics issues, but also whales research and others as well. We eventually got together and sort of went from there. So after that West Africa stint, I and two Norwegians founded an NGO called TMT, which was really focused very much on, rather than campaigning on outside issues, working in a technical support capacity to governments on illegal fisheries and broader maritime security issues. So set that up, ran that, was the executive director for 10 years. It was based in Norway for a number of reasons, but particularly because Norway has a big ocean focus in its ocean development funds and so on. Um, and so as part of that, we moved there just before COVID. So it was a very lovely place to be because we got locked in, but Norway kind of got on and we managed to get a little boat and we sailed up and down the coast. Um, and in parallel, we're starting to plan this trip. And as we sort of slowly got ready, we looked at what we wanted to do in terms of where we wanted to visit, like everybody does, and what kind of boat we wanted, like everybody does. But also, we wanted to see what we could do as a family along the way. And citizen science was an obvious one to sort of look at. But what we found was that there were lots of projects out there, but they're very hard to find. Scientists generally are very good at science, but not very good at communicating. And so we could find projects, but it was tricky, and getting in touch with people was proving to be a bit of a pain sometimes, and so on. And so we decided to set up a directory of citizen science, of marine focused citizen science projects that really anybody could access, and gave a breakdown not just of the project, but where it was, what it was focused on, whether that was biodiversity or on plastics or pollution or water quality or whatever it might be, what skill set you needed, whether you needed to have a boat or not, really to make it as easy for people to find projects that they could be interested in, that they could get involved in based on where they were, what their skill sets were, what tools they had, and then go from there. And so we set that up, and it has been a uh, illuminating success, I guess would be the best way of putting it. Yeah, it's been really remarkable how many people we met who said, "Oh man, we really wanted to get involved, but didn't know where to start." And and that's really sort of the answer we were trying to the question we were trying to answer. So, no, it's been great. We get a huge amount of people coming to the site now, and a huge people getting engaged. And we've been doing a lot of talks and a lot of engagement. We get kids on board all the time to do things, and yeah, it's been lots of fun.
A lot of families getting involved, in particular with
Families,
younger
families are a
generation.
big part of it, definitely. Yeah. For a lot of families, they see it not just as a great way to engage their kids, but also something that augments the schooling they're giving them on their boats. But really, it's everybody. And while we sort of started out sort of thinking that our target would be the cruising community, it's actually really broadened out from there. We get a lot of people from diving community, for example. We've been invited to give a couple of talks at dive centers, particularly in Fiji, and that really got a lot of people involved. And divers obviously are another community who are really hands-on with a lot of this. But it could be anyone. I mean, you can be walking your dog down the beach and the things you can do. There are projects in there that you could be sitting in the middle of Australia and you can still get involved in ocean focused projects because they need people to, you know, scan photos and look for particular species in them or whatever it may be. So there's really something there for everyone. There are now 50 projects in there. We have several more to add. Our biggest challenge right now really is just that is time to be able to get things up there and make sure they're right and make sure the links to the projects and the communities that they represent are correct. But yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it's lovely also because we've been able to tie it in with some of the local initiatives that are being run by local organizations in different countries, and see how they can tie into the cruising community as well. And that's something we're now working on a lot this year is looking at this sort of flow of boats who come across the Pacific every year, and how can Conservation International in Samoa or one of the organizations we worked with in Fiji sort of tie into these boats coming in so these boats can help them collect information, whether it's on whales or turtles or whatever it might be as they come across each year.
But although you have been in the Pacific the last couple of years or whatever, um, you've got boats joining everywhere in the oceans. Is that right? Atlantic,
Everywhere, yeah.
Indian
There
Ocean.
there are projects in there now for wherever you are in the world. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
we have tended to prioritize getting projects into the directory based on where we are heading. So right now it's probably overly, overly is probably the wrong word, but there are more Pacific projects right now than the rest of the world. But many of these projects or many of the tools that the are used in these projects are applicable wherever you are.
good. Much cynicism along the way, or has it all been universally good experiences? Many
Oh,
cynics
I
out there.
think, yeah. I mean, different people have had different experiences with citizen science, and different people have different ideas of what's effective or not. There are some people certainly who are like, I'm out here, I'm just sailing. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
And there are others who are extraordinarily active and really taking part, and then everyone is sort of in between. I mean, part of what we are trying to demystify a little bit is that this is something that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and so on. There are, our easiest project is literally a little dongle that I tie into our Raymarine backbone, and it is just recording all the depth soundings that we were taking along the way. And every 3 months, I take a little chip out and I upload some data. That's literally all I have to do, and that's contributing to a global study on the seabed. Amazing. Others are very involved. There's a bit of kit that you have to get from the project itself, and we've had one where whenever we're in high seas areas, we've been towing this great big frame behind us, and it's amazing, particularly for the kids, because you pull this net out and it's studying the top meter of the ocean layer in high seas areas, and the creatures that we pull out have been extraordinary. But it involves slowing the boat down to less than 2 knots and particular conditions,
It
being able
doesn't
to
go down
deploy the
well with the
boat.
skipper.
No, no, that's not my favorite bit. And storing this thing and deploying it and washing it out afterwards and so
Yeah.
on. So that's definitely one that's more involved. But wherever you are in terms of how engaged you want to be, how hands-on you want to be, and how often you want to do it, there is something out there that you can contribute to without a doubt. Um,
And it's not
no,
just the project, it's the actual engagement that's important as well, isn't it? I'm just thinking locally, there's an issue with water pollution in some of the big river catchment areas in Wales caused by chicken farms and various other agricultural pollutants. And the government monitoring of that water just doesn't happen. But the citizen science engagement is fantastic. So I don't think our rivers have ever been so well monitored as they are now. And
yeah,
as a
yeah,
result, everybody knows how to check for nitrates and phosphates and E. coli or whatever, and can tell you how many E. coli there are in such and such a tributary of the Severn or the Wye or whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah, and
that's
that's
heard by
that's what
government, and it makes difference to
it
planning
really
decisions,
is.
everything else. Yeah.
It really is, yeah. And that's a great example also of sort of the range of where you can be on projects. I mean, there are great projects that are very local to an area and are stronger for the fact that they're getting repeat engagement by quite a lot of people over a period of time. And that's a really, really important data set that's collected by that group of people. At the other end are the fact that there's a lot of areas that scientists can't get to.
Mm,
And we as cruisers are getting to these places very often. And so you might not get the same sort of consistent data set because we are moving and so on. And that is something that we're trying to address by getting this engagement of boats coming across every year, that at least you get a little bit of a longer term data set in the same areas. But we are getting data from places that people never get to,
fantastic.
whether it's because we are getting there because we've got boats that scientists can't access and get to, or it's because government can't afford to have data monitoring or equipment or whatever it is in those places because of the realities of budgets and so on. So there are so many boats out there, and increasing number of boats, and increasing number of boats going to more and more
Mm.
unusual places, and those places very often are the ones that are underrepresented in terms of understanding what's happening to them and what can be done.
I believe, Duncan, the Ocean Cruising Club helped facilitate some of this work by giving you a challenge grant award a year ago.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. No, that was fantastic, and it was really helpful in terms of some of the time and the development of the website, particularly, which is the main sort of communications platform. And
Applying for that, was that a straightforward process or a bureaucratic process, or
as
in
as
terms of agony,
somebody who's
how
written
painful was
many,
it?
yeah, no, as somebody who's written many grants over the years in the NGO space, it was fairly straightforward and a fairly quick turnaround, which is also
Good.
not very common. So no, it was an excellent experience all around.
Yeah.
And yeah, this last year we have spent a lot of time really building up the directory itself and really focusing on sort of getting it so it's accessible, and of course, it's focusing on getting ourselves across the Pacific. This year coming, we are going to spend more time, I think, on really trying to reach out and communicate and get the tool in as many people's hands as possible. And we hope to be able to do that with the OCC community as much as possible included. So, yeah, really looking to sort of hopefully this year engage more with the OCC, see people hopefully engaging in return. And there's a number of different areas there that I'm really interested in exploring with the OCC in terms of how we can do that.
Yeah, I'd be really keen to hook up for a proper webinar at some stage. Um, we're both on roughly the same schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. Perhaps at the same time zone, even that'd be easy. That would be easier, but that would be really good to do that. We ran during lockdown some webinars on environmental issues. And they were actually really popular. We had the guy who was the director of the British Antarctic Survey, and now runs the SAMS up on the west coast of Scotland.
Yeah.
He was inspirational. What a great
Very
audience.
good.
Tell us some
Yeah.
good news. So the world's full of bad news, particularly in environmental concerns, whether it's climate change, microplastics, coral destruction. Anything in the data that's looking optimistic at the moment, or is it all just doom and gloom?
Yeah, I mean, we were quite spoiled because we started uh, with our trip with the circumnavigation around Vancouver Island,
Right.
and when I grew up in that area, there were no sea otters, there were very few whales, and we got to the point going around Vancouver Island where it was hard to get the kids up to see another whale. I mean, it was extraordinary how many humpbacks are up there now. How the sea otter population. I really remember as a kid when they reintroduced sea otters to the west coast of Vancouver Island from
Mm.
Alaska, and you have to dodge them now. There are so many. It is truly remarkable. So there have been some really great stories in terms of species
So that's
reintroduction.
natural recovery by getting rid of the whale hunting or presumably trapping of otters and
Yeah,
things
so
like
on the whale side, there's a couple of factors. Obviously, yeah, the end of whaling was a big part. There, at the end of a couple of types of fishing as well, that was really competing for food source. Also, was a big part of that. With the sea otters, it was a combination of factors. There needed to be a people-led reintroduction program. Obviously, sea otters disappear from that area because of hunting.
that.
Back in the day, there's no hunting of them now. But once they were there, I mean, the environment was right for them. In fact, overly right because sea otters play such a key part of the ecosystem, and particularly the kelp ecosystem, and because of the sea urchins and other things that feed on the kelp. So there were a lot of sea urchins around, which is a big part of the reason that they were reintroduced, and their populations have really bounced. And then naturally they have spread. So they are now from one end to the other of the outside, the outer west coast of Vancouver Island, and now they're starting to come in and move north. And eventually the hope is that they join the population that's moving south from Alaska. So there are some great stories like that, really, truly. But there are also a lot that go the other way, as you
I know,
say,
I know.
and particularly the big challenges there are pollutants, plastics, and others that continue to sort of build up. And there is no one single source of those. So you have a challenge in terms of, where do you turn off the tap? What's interesting though about so many of those challenges is that while they are ocean challenges in the sense that that's where we see the impacts, a lot of those are actually land-based solutions. The source of the majority of plastics that end up in the water are coming from land. They're coming
Going into
from
the rivers and
going into
just being
rivers
dumped.
or straight into sea or however it might be. So it's an interesting one there in terms of connectivity. There's some very interesting opportunities coming up too. Just a few days ago, you may have seen in the news that the Global Ocean Treaty was signed. This is something
Hmm.
called the
Yep.
Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction. This is something that I've been peripherally involved with for many years, and it's truly excellent to see it come into force. As all global treaties are, they require a certain number of countries to ratify them, and then they come into force. There's so many countries that haven't ratified them, including the US and the UK, and so some major players there. But it does give us a framework for what happens on the high seas, and that's the other big missing puzzle is that every country has jurisdiction up to 12 miles. They've got economic jurisdiction up to 200 miles, but what happens outside of that? And in fisheries, we've had some frameworks, particularly for management of tuna in those areas, but not for everything else. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there because it's not just about extraction of resources, it's also about management and pollution and various other things are all covered.
And
So it'll be interesting to
it
see
is
what happens
possible to
there.
make change. I remember chatting with a friend in New Zealand actually, who had spent his university years on a monitoring the longline boats in Japan out of Japan 35 years ago, and the research that he was doing on that boat all got published up and resulted in the moratorium on that particular method of fishing, and
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah.
Something changed. It's amazing. So you don't get, I believe, longliners anymore, which is I think it was longliner. Perhaps it was drift nets. I can't remember which it was, but something was.
Probably drift
Yeah, it was
nets.
drift
Yeah,
nets.
they're starting to creep in a little bit. I've been supporting the Canadian Coast Guard with some patrols in the North Pacific, and they've been finding a few. But yeah, I mean that was a horrendous way of fishing.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so there are good news stories out there, and another thing that's been very heartwarming for us across the way is these interactions we have had with local organizations working on these issues. There's sort of three areas to the work we're doing. Is the directory and citizen science is one. The other is, as I mentioned earlier, is sort of supporting local organizations and researchers and ocean communicators, whether that's on board the boat or just with, however we can contribute our skill sets. And the third one is looking at how we can sort of promote more responsible cruising practices and trialing new technologies on the boat and so on. So with that second focus area, we've been able to sort of do these collaborations. And for example, with Conservation International in Samoa, they are working with the government there to develop a national citizen science framework so that the government and the organizations that are working on environmental issues across the country are able to collaborate on further engaging citizens and other relevant stakeholders on using citizen science to add to their knowledge base. And a really interesting one while we were there is a big discussion around whales again.
yeah,
That whole area of the Pacific is a really important whale habitat. The Samoan government every 3 years gets enough money to send a boat out for 2 weeks to do surveys. And that is it. That's all the information they have. And yet, in the time we were sitting there in Apia, every single sailboat that came in had seen whales coming in. We talked to a local fisherman who'd just seen orcas, that is a really important resource to be able to get that information into the hands of the whale research team in Samoa. So those kind of things, also seeing the opportunity is fantastic. And the fact that there are organizations and governments who are really, really, driven to see those solutions brought in.
And useful, I guess, for those economies to open up ecotourism type opportunities. Obviously,
Absolutely.
it's huge in Tonga, huge in Niue, Cook Islands,
Yeah.
the whole whale watching thing. We didn't go
Yeah,
recently,
I
but
mean,
I guess it's quite
another
good.
collaboration we did was in Fiji with an organization that's based between the US and Fiji, but they are working on Benga Island, and they're working very closely with the dive resort, and the dive resort has provided them a base for their coral research and community engagement. But in return, the dive resort has done really well out of it because they have divers who come specifically because they want to see these projects and
Mm.
they want to get engaged with what they're doing and so on. So there's a win-win there
It's
very
a really
often.
symbiotic relationship, isn't it, between the
Yeah.
tourism, the science,
Yeah.
and the cruises, as it should be.
Yeah.
Well done for doing it, and thank you for doing it. I always want to talk about the David Attenborough film that came out last year, the ocean film, which I Attenborough. There is no better narrator
Yeah.
of our natural history, but the way that he manages to blend that sense of optimism with the obvious sense of despair. It's good that we have something optimistic to take away from this meeting tonight. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
great that the otters are back in Vancouver Island and the whales are booming, and the whales in the South Pacific are doing well as well. I think.
They are. Yeah. 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 That film was excellent. Again, I was sort of peripherally involved with the work, and I knew a lot of people involved, and I agree. I mean, I think we don't win by being doom and gloom all the time.
Yeah, you just put people
I
off. Yeah,
recently took part in a talk which was titled "What do we do about the ocean climate crisis?" And I started with saying, "I'm not sure this is a great way to start talking about this subject." I've been working in this space a long time, and I've seen some horrendous things, but I have seen also some really wonderful things, and I am still an optimist in this space, and I am also very convinced that a huge amount of what's happening is not being done because people are deliberately being bad. It's just there's not enough information and
just
communication and
carelessness, isn't it? It's
ability to sort of access the information to be able to get involved. And hopefully we're playing a very small part in terms of trying to address that.
Yeah, and his message really of actually, if you do leave bits of the ocean alone, it does recover actually amazingly quickly, as you're
It,
seeing with your in British Columbia.
it's remarkable. Yeah. 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 And as you see everywhere, I mean, it is amazing that how quickly places can bounce back. And even here, we've recently had an experience in New Zealand. We went out to the Poor Knights, which is just
Mhm.
off Whangarei there, which has been a protected area for about 30, 40 years. And it is extraordinary. I really encourage you to go out there if you get a good calm day to go drop your hook and
It,
just stick your face in the water.
it's on our bucket list. Yeah, yeah,
It is remarkable. And it gives you a sense of how it must have been before people arrived and how it could be,
yeah.
if we manage things just a little bit better. So yeah, no, those little moments are really good for the soul and sort of inspire you further to get involved.
Duncan, that's fantastic. Thank you for hooking up tonight. Really enjoyed it, and we will make a date for a more formal webinar perhaps later on in the year, if that's okay.
That'd be great. Yeah, yeah.
Great.
No, thank you very much, Simon. I really appreciate it. And as I said, we look forward to engaging the OCC community more this year. There's four OCC boats in here right now. We were all together last night around the fire, so that was lots of fun.
Yeah, that's very good. We'll hopefully catch up with you in a couple of weeks' time if you're going to
Sounds
be in
good.
Marsden Cove. But it's quite a long way from Marsden Cove to the centre of Whangarei, isn't it? Until we drove down to Auckland, I hadn't realised it was quite so far.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
a big system, but yeah, no, we're. I'm not looking forward to the boat work, but I am looking forward to addressing a few things and getting the boat ready for next year. We're really excited to get back up to the Pacific, and we've got
yeah.
some really exciting things coming up next year too. So that'll be great.
Thanks. Love to Larissa and the kids, and see you in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. And thanks for dialing in tonight, Duncan. Cheers now.
Just having. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.